Good morning, and thank you for joining us again for our devotional series on those defining moments or statements that are in the Bible. Today I would like to look at Abraham's grandson Jacob, and his story is told us in Genesis 25 to 35. Let's read from an incident in his life from Genesis 32 verses 22 to 30. That night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched, and he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." Friends, the story is fairly well known. Jacob was the younger of twins and was what we would term a fixer. Someone who uses whatever means at his disposal to advance his own position without regard for the consequences on the lives of others, and irrespective of his own integrity. The name Jacob literally means one who grasps the heel, which can be interpreted as deceiver, or one who deceives. He conned his elder brother out of his birthright, and then with the compliance of his mother, deceived his aging father into giving him the blessing that one would normally give to the oldest son. Now, the deception of both Jacob and his mother had consequences for them both. Jacob had to flee from the wrath of his brother, and his mother, when he did so, never saw him again. Then while on the run, God appears to Jacob and gives him a promise that he will bless his descendants and the land will be theirs. And then in that promise, he gives the messianic prophecy that through Jacob's offspring, all peoples on earth will be blessed. It is amazing how God chooses to have all sorts of dodgy characters in the royal line of the Messiah. So to teach Jacob a practical lesson, God engineers that he lives with someone and learns what it's like to be on the other end of deception. He gets him to stay with his uncle Laban in the north in a place called Haran, from which Abraham had come. And Laban turns out to be a bigger crook than Jacob ever was, and cons Jacob to work for him for 14 years. And Jacob ends up with 2 wives, 2 handmaidens, and they all become mothers of the 12 sons of Jacob eventually. Jacob ends up, after 14 years, escaping from Laban, running away with the 2 daughters and the 2 handmaids and a wealth of possessions and flocks. Once he's on the road, he begins to scheme again because he wants to appease his brother, and he's heard that his brother's on the way to meet him. Now, on that return trip, God has to do something important in Jacob's life. And we're told that a stranger wrestled with him and left him with a damaged hip. Now, it's clear from Jacob's concluding line that actually he was wrestling with either an angel or with God himself, because Jacob says at the end, "I saw God face to face." And they wrestled until daybreak. And God, I believe, was doing a deep work in Jacob's life and touched his hip as a figurative or physical sign for him to not forget that actually when God breaks us, that's when we can be used by him. And the Christian walk is like that. For there comes times in our own life when God has to engineer circumstances which break parts of our old nature off, that are unattractive to him. Much the same way as a sculptor chisels hard stone blocks to make and shape a perfect sculpture. Those times are usually very painful for us, but we can look back and see what they have produced. Now the story ends up in Jacob in desperation, holding on to God and asking for his blessing. And we at times will be doing that. We'll be in that position where we're holding on and say, God, please, please don't leave me. I know I'm a sinner. I know I've failed you. But please stay with me and help me through this. And God always does that in his grace. So what does he do? God changes Jacob's name to Israel, from deceiver to the one who struggles with God or wrestles with God. And Jacob was never the same again. You see, brokenness in the believer is the gateway to his own growth. Only when the perfume jar is broken does one experience the fragrance of the perfume. And so the key one-liner is the statement that Jacob wrestled with God. And consequently, as a result of that incident, Jacob was never the same. As you're aware, this man, fraught with character flaws, ends up with his name being given to the nation of Israel. Friends, I really would encourage you to always seek to be a man or woman who wrestles with God. Wrestles in prayer so as to conquer your own weaknesses, but also cries out for the lives and souls of others. When you learn that principle, I believe you will receive God's blessing and favor on your life. Come, let's pray. Jesus, help us to learn that brokenness is a cause for growth in our lives, and not fair when you have to chisel away those negative things in our life that are displeasing to you. May we be pliable like clay, that the potter can mold us into the shape he wants us to be. We ask this in your precious name. Amen. Blessings until next time.